Do you want to stay as sharp, as agile, as capable as you were in your 20s or 30s? I mean, not just physically, but mentally. Imagine clear thinking, fast recall, good judgment, the ability to focus, articulate, and make decisions without hesitation. Do you remember I keep pushing you to exercise consistently? Why I keep telling you to do aerobic work, to do strength training, to move your body week after week? It's not about weight, it's not about aesthetics, and it's definitely not about looking younger. All of these are to protect your brain, which is one of the most important jobs you have, and most people are doing almost nothing about it. If you don't protect it, you've heard what happens: dementia, Alzheimer's disease. Right now, over 60 million people worldwide are living with Alzheimer's. That number is projected to triple by 2050, and of those, 110 million will be women. This disease doesn't just affect memory, it robs you of who you are, your identity, your independence, your ability to function as yourself. Dementia and Alzheimer's disease are not part of normal brain aging. They are not inevitable. They are not just what happens when you get older. In fact, when we look at the data, around 95% of current Alzheimer's cases could have been prevented. This is not a genetic disease for the vast majority of people. It is a lifestyle disease. And that changes everything. What makes this even more important is that Alzheimer's is not a disease of old age. It's a disease of midlife. Biologically, it often begins in your 30s. You won't notice symptoms then. Those usually show up decades later, in your 60s, 70s, or beyond. But the damage starts much earlier. Your brain finishes developing in your mid-20s. After that, it responds to how you live. If you don't challenge it, nourish it, and support it, it slowly loses capacity. This is where a concept called cognitive reserve becomes critical. Cognitive reserve is your brain's ability to tolerate stress, damage, and pathology without losing function. Two people can have very similar brains on a scan, even similar levels of amyloid, but one person can function perfectly well while the other does not. The difference is the reserve. The more reserves you build over time, the more your brain can withstand harmful insults later in life. You can have an 80-year-old woman with a head full of amyloid beta who still thinks clearly and functions well. And you can have someone else with far less pathology who has already lost cognitive function. That difference doesn't happen by accident. So, how do you build a reserve? There are several ways. Studies show that handwriting and reading help preserve cognitive capacity, even into the mid-70s. Novelty matters. Learning matters. But guess what? Exercise. Physical exercise is one of the most powerful stimuli we have for brain health and Alzheimer's prevention. The more you exercise, the bigger and more resilient your brain becomes. Now, people often ask, what about scrolling? What about watching educational videos? Aren't I still learning? The answer is no, not in the same way. When you scroll, you're training your brain on short dopamine hits. Every swipe gives you a tiny reward. Your brain adapts to that pattern. And when that happens, sustained focus, deep thinking, reading, and real conversation become harder. Your brain is wired for survival and reproduction. It adapts very quickly to the signals you give it, and constant low-effort stimulation weakens the very systems you want to preserve. Now here's where the exercise conversation gets specific. When we look at all the data, the highest return on investment for brain health comes from resistance training, strength training. One of the most compelling studies was the SMART trial. Researchers took people with mild cognitive impairment, a pre-dementia state, and had them perform resistance training 2 to 3 times per week. They didn't just preserve cognitive function, they improved processing speed, they improved fluid intelligence, and they slowed the loss of gray matter. Your brain has gray matter and white matter. Gray matter contains the cell bodies and does the processing. White matter contains the communication highways. Over time, white matter lesions and gray matter thinning appear unless you intervene. One of the most vulnerable regions is the hippocampus. This is where memory consolidation and learning happen. It's also one of the first areas to shrink in Alzheimer's disease, which is why short-term memory is often the first symptom. Here's the remarkable part. You can grow new neurons in the hippocampus through structured, consistent exercise. The key driver is brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF. It's a growth factor for the brain. Aerobic exercise releases it. Resistance training releases it too. But resistance training does something extra. When muscles contract under load, they release signaling molecules called myokines. These molecules travel through the bloodstream, cross the blood-brain barrier, and communicate directly with the brain. One of them helps BDNF express itself more strongly. Another, interleukin-6, behaves very differently during exercise than during illness. Instead of promoting inflammation, it reduces it. It reduces neuroinflammation and may suppress tumor growth. This is why exercise is not just brain protective, but also one of the most potent anti-cancer interventions we have. Just 30 minutes a day of aerobic activity has been shown to downregulate 13 types of cancer, including breast, colon, and prostate cancer. Resistance training contributes through anti-inflammatory pathways and immune activation, including the release of natural killer cells that actively target tumor tissue. These myokines are so powerful that pharmaceutical companies have spent billions trying and failing to replicate them in a pill. And there's one more critical insight. Think of your brain as real estate. There is a literal neural territory reserved for movement. When you lift light weights, the demand is small. When you lift heavy weights, the demand is large. Heavy lifting requires more coordination, more motor unit recruitment, more neural drive. The heavier the load, the more neural real estate is activated. The greater the neural drive, the stronger the signal to the brain. This is why strength, especially lower body strength, correlates so strongly with brain volume and cognitive preservation. So when I push you to exercise consistently, this is why. This is not just about burning calories, and not just to look better, but to build a brain that lasts. It is important to be strong and sharp. If you find this helpful, please support the channel by subscribing. Thanks for watching.